Mercury, the planet of communication, enters Sagittarius on November 2nd for a long stay. Indeed, Mercury is going retrograde at the end of November. So, this is a good time to start preparing ourselves for those typical retrograde snafus, such as getting stuck in traffic, sending that email to the wrong person, not pressing send on that email, sending a risque photo to your mom accidentally. And on the world stage, we want to watch for things like delays. Mercury retrograde has been known to delay election results, for example. So let's get into it. I've got a lot more to say about this, so have at it. Mercury, the planet of communication and intellect, is moving into the fiery sign of Sagittarius on November 2nd, 2024. We are going to be working with Mercury and Sagittarius for a long while. So buckle in because the next 2 months are going to carry this outspoken, energetic, hilarious flavor. So, why are we going to be working with Mercury here for so long? We are due, indeed, for another Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is going to be here until January 8th, 2025. Mercury is going to station retrograde on November 25th at 22 degrees Sagittarius. It's going to retrograde back to 6 degrees Sagittarius and station direct there on December 15th. So if you have planets between 6 degrees Sagittarius and 22 degrees Sagittarius, or any of the mutable signs, or let's say the fire signs, then you may be feeling this Mercury retrograde a little bit more in an impactful way in your chart. So let's break it down. Let's get into what Mercury in Sagittarius is all about. So Mercury indeed has its detriment in Sagittarius, which means that Mercury is having a little bit of a more difficult time in Sagittarius. Mercury can still perform well in Sagittarius. There's lots of fun things that come from it, but Mercury is trying a little bit harder because Mercury is a very fast moving planet. Mercury wants the data. Mercury wants to scroll. Mercury wants the quick hits of information. But Sagittarius is a sign of like the seeker. It's a sign ruled by Jupiter. It's about the long form enrichment on a specific topic. It's about the journey, the travel, the destination. It's about all of that. And so Mercury is a little bit of a harder time here because it's trying to it's basically like galaxy brain. Like it's trying to explain all the things, but it's difficult to find the words for it. It's difficult to, let's say, fit this big long dissertation into a little post or a little tweet or whatever. It's like a classic example of someone makes a tweet and you have a bunch of people in the comments saying, well, what about this? And what about that? And you didn't specify this or that. And the person's like, it's just a tweet. That's kind of like Mercury and Sagittarius. We're struggling to make big points in a limited amount of characters, let's just say. So that's Mercury and Sagittarius. Something else that we're going to be working with Mercury and Sagittarius is the exaggeration of the truth. That's one that we really want to watch for around this time, especially in American politics, because I'm foreseeing this to be a really intense time in terms of deciding who the president is going to be. I don't think this is going to be a cut and dry election based on a lot of the signatures I've been seeing. I've written about this extensively, which you can find on my website. You can also find the videos that I've done that go into in-depth forecasting of the election. But for our purposes here, I just want to say I think that it's not going to be a cut and dry decision. I think it's going to be drawn out. And something that we really, really want to watch for is the exaggeration and bending and manipulation of the truth. And I say that because Mercury is in Sagittarius. There's a tendency to kind of blow things out of proportion, to sensationalize, to exaggerate, to sensationalize, and kind of make bigger stories out of things that are little, or kind of downplay things in other ways. And I think this kind of fits into the bigger picture of Mercury is going to be coming into 3 oppositions with Jupiter. and 3 squares with Saturn. So on one hand, this opposition that we're going to be working with Mercury and Jupiter, that is going to kind of be nice because they're going to be in mutual reception. Let's go ahead and pull up a chart here. Okay, so I'm animating this chart. Here we are on November 12th. This is when we're going to see the very first square between Mercury and Saturn. And then you'll see Mercury is going to come into that opposition with Jupiter just a few days later on the 18th. So we're going to see that happen there. So on one hand, Mercury is kind of yoking together this larger overarching theme of Jupiter square Saturn. And I've talked about this extensively in my Jupiter in Gemini webinar, which is for sale on my website. It's a 2-hour webinar, goes into depth on Jupiter in Gemini throughout the last 100 years or so. Actually, I think 200 years. I kind of go pretty deep into it. And also it talks in depth about this Jupiter-Saturn square. One of the things that we're seeing is issues with the truth. With Jupiter and Gemini, there's a lot of quick, rapidly changing information. Like the terrain is changing, the situation is changing, and it's really difficult to get a definite grasp on where we should stand. There's too many vantage points to consider basically with Jupiter and Gemini. Now, the nice thing is that these two are going to be in mutual reception. So that's going to help us get the facts and get things in order to kind of get to the bottom of things. And Saturn has its work cut out for it because Saturn is trying to sort things out. Saturn is trying to say no, that's too much information, or I'm trying to fact check, or that isn't correct, or that's wrong or misleading. Essentially, one thing that I'm deeply concerned about, especially with Pluto moving through Aquarius for the next 20 some years, but especially this year under this configuration, is how algorithms are kind of the enemy, and how algorithms and who's creating the algorithms and whose agenda those algorithms serve, how those influence our thinking. Because we're all sort of in our own self-validating feedback loops that continuously reaffirm our own belief systems. And there isn't a whole lot of organic overlapping in the terrain. We're kind of in our own echo chambers here on social media. And that's something that we really need to be watchful for, because who's showing you, who's feeding you all this content? On one hand, we're getting fed content that we agree with so that we, stay engaged on the platform. But also there are people with specific agendas that may be kind of showing us specific content in order to create a certain agenda. So that's all I'll say on that without getting deeper into my own views. But that is something to be mindful of under this transit, is where is this stream coming from? And can I think for myself on this one? I think that's really important to be able to set ourselves apart from the echo chamber, how our views may be more unique to our personal experience than to the echo chamber. And I think that's something that this alignment is trying to sort out, is what do I believe? Okay. So we're going to be working with this here. And then Mercury's going to go retrograde, like I said, on the 25th. Mercury's going to station retrograde at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So that's where the retrograde drama begins. Mercury is then going to retrograde back to activate this square with Jupiter and Saturn again in early December. This is right around the time that Mars stations retrograde. So right there. I mean, we see the square with Saturn on the 6th of December, and a couple days before that, we're seeing the opposition with Jupiter exact again, and Mars stations retrograde on the 6th. So there's a lot happening here. This is a cluster of transits to watch around this time. We're also getting, if you noticed, a Mercury cazimi happening right there. It happens at 14 degrees of Sag. So that's happening right, locking right in with this Jupiter opposition and the Saturn square. So that is going to be influential for us with our Mercury Cazimi download that is happening on, let's see here. Let's see, what is that exact date here? I have the 5th written down at 14 degrees, 27 minutes. So Mercury Cazimi is always about getting like a message. It usually comes from within, though sometimes we get a distinctive message, like something becomes really stark in our awareness. And I feel like you have to be kind of sensitive to notice your message. Again, astrology isn't, I mean, there's many ways to engage with astrology, right? It's kind of a tool that the practitioner gets to decide the level of their relationship with. And I feel that Mercury Cazimis aren't always going to be bold and stand out for everyone. But for those who are intentionally trying to pay attention to what is the message, what is the sign, where is the point of clarity coming from, sometimes it's like an instinctive alignment, an internal alignment, revelation, something that just clicks in and feels right in your heart and mind. That would be your Mercury revelation. And sometimes it happens from the world around us. To be able to notice the symbols, to understand the universe as alive and sentient, that's part of it. That's part of recognizing your message a lot of the time. So for us, this is going to be something about discerning the truth and trying to cut out some of the noise. Jupiter in Gemini is noise. It's endless data, and Saturn saying, I need to have limits and boundaries with that. I need to find the quiet of the woods or the quiet of my meditation mat or the quiet of the dawn or sunset, to be still and to be there with my own thoughts. So there's something about that ability to quiet that could be important there. Our ability to streamline our intake of information. So watch for those things around December 6th. There's also that Mars retrograde going on. We'll talk about that in a separate video. Here, I just want to focus on Mercury. Lastly, Mercury is going to go direct on December 15th. And that's going to happen at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, here we see another connection with Mars. This is happening in a direct trine with Mars retrograde. So there's something important about this Mars retrograde story that is going to play into our Mercury story here. So Mercury, Mars, this is flowing fire, talking about speech, communication, decision making. This would be maybe like something confronting dialogue, outspokenness. Something Mercury and Sagittarius is really great at is being outspoken. So in some ways that can not be favorable for us if we're a little sharing too much, a little TMI there. It could not be the most favorable thing if you accidentally slip something that you weren't supposed to reveal. But Mercury and Sagittarius can be awesome for those who are a little bit more shy or tend to be maybe too reserved. Mercury and Sagittarius can help you with an extroverted nudge. It can help you to be more forthcoming. And Mercury and Sagittarius can be playful. It can be jesting. It could be antagonizing. So this might be a joke that goes a little too far, or this could be something kind of supercharged in the way that you share something or reveal something. So there's courage here in this outspokenness, and maybe a revelation for us around our Mars retrograde story, because Mars is trying to rework something in our chart. So there's information coming to Mercury here. Mercury's ready to go forward. Mars is not. But there is consensus here on something. Finally, let's just finish our story here. Right at the end of the calendar year, we're going to see Mercury come into that square with Saturn and the opposition with Jupiter for the last time. So that's happening on December 26th and 27th. And that's going to wrap up that story for us of the Mercury Jupiter-Saturn drama. So I hope that Mercury in Sagittarius serves you in the highest. I hope you enjoy the more humorous ways that Mercury and Sagittarius can show up. I find that the TMI shares are really entertaining. And I find that also there can be a little too much noise with Mercury and Sag. You know, not everyone needs to share their opinion and not everyone needs to hear our opinion. That's maybe one of the downsides of this transit is that, yeah, it's incredibly outspoken. And so that Saturn may help you kind of attune to your level of information intake that is comfortable for you, or help you kind of check yourself with how much you're revealing. But I hope that this transit lets you have a good time. Again, this can be a really fun time with Mercury and Sag. The playfulness, the funniness, the banter. It's comical. But yeah, it can be very opinionated too. So always watch for that. And that's your Mercury and Sagittarius astrology shot of the day. And we'll be talking more about Mercury retrograde, I'm sure, in time. But for right now, that's what I got. And yeah, I'll catch you next time. Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in with me today. For more astrology in your world, you can connect with me on all platforms at Astro Catherine. You can also head on over to my website, catherineurban.com, where you can book your next astrology reading. We'll go into depth into your natal chart, your progressions, your profections, your solar return, your transits, and beyond. You can also join my mailing list where you can stay up to date with me on new classes as well as article drops. I look forward to connecting with you, and I'll see you next time.